Hello, everyone. My name is Anna Martin Coesel. I'm a PhD student at CESI LINEACT, and today I'll present the results of the first experiment I conducted in my PhD. So many of you are probably already familiar with the Proteus effect, but for those who aren't, it refers to the fact that users of virtual environments have a tendency to display behaviors and attitudes that are coherent with the stereotypes associated with the avatars they embody. So, for example, in the study by Yi and Bailinson that termed this effect, they showed that participants embodying a tall avatar, they tended to be more confident and self-serving during a negotiation task. Since this publication, numerous other studies have replicated this effect using a variety of avatars and tasks. Such demonstrations include one in which an avatar of Albert Einstein led to higher scores on a cognitive task. If many studies have been able to demonstrate the effect, very few have actually focused on the theoretical understanding of it. To improve this, our research aims to study the cognitive mechanisms underlying the Proteus effect. So, Yi and Bailinsen's original publication gave two theoretical explanations of the Proteus effect. The first they brought up is self-perception theory, which describes how people sometimes use external cues that they exhibit, so in our case, the avatar's appearance, to determine their own attitudes. This theory is currently the most cited explanation of the Proteus effect. The second theory that Yi and Bailinsen relied on is the process of deindividuation. In psychology, deindividuation is a concept used to explain why people, in specific situations, may exhibit extreme behaviors that they would otherwise never engage in. The classic example of it is when people immersed in a crowd become extremely aggressive. This theory is that people's behavior is suddenly driven by situational norms instead of personal ones. Similarly to crowds, online spaces are also thought to provoke deindividuation and lead to behaviors such as online harassment. Ye and Bailinson theorized that embodying an avatar may also lead to deindividuation, which could cause users then to adhere to the avatar's identity. The authors had proposed these two theories as complementary, but interestingly, deindividuation is very rarely mentioned in the literature and has actually never been tested. Therefore, the research question we aim to answer is, with this study, is does deindividuation actually play a role in the emergence of the Proteus effect? So to study that, we first needed to establish an experimental setting that would allow us to observe the Proteus effect. When researching in the literature, we noted that most Proteus effect studies used tasks that had little to no connection to the real world. So, as an additional contribution, we wanted to test a Proteus effect paradigm with higher ecological validity. This brought us to test the preliminary research question, can the Proteus effect be applied to a real academic context? To test this first research question, we chose to use an avatar of Albert Einstein. We did so firstly because previous research has already shown its positive impact on cognitive tasks, and secondly because it's a very pertinent figure to use within an applied academic context as it relates to intelligence and scientific success. The participants of this experiment were all recruited from the same class of third-year engineering students. Finally, the avatar's effects on the students was tested using a test assessing their knowledge of a statistics course that they had taken a few months prior. The test contained 10 multiple-choice questions and was designed specifically for this experiment with the help of a teacher. With this design, we therefore aim to test whether embodying Albert Einstein could improve engineering students' recollection of a statistics course. In this experiment, participants were randomly assigned to one of two avatar conditions. So they either embodied the Einstein avatar or a control avatar matching their gender. For this preliminary experiment, we hypothesized that students embodying the Einstein avatar would have significantly higher scores on the statistics test compared to students embodying the control avatars, demonstrating the Proteus effect. To display the avatar and the task, we use an immersive virtual environment with full body tracking. In this environment, participants could see their avatar through a virtual mirror, as you can see here, and the statistics questions were displayed on top of the mirror to allow participants to always see their avatar. The results of this preliminary experiment did reveal that students embodying the Einstein avatar had significantly higher scores compared to those using the control avatars, therefore validating our hypothesis. We can thus conclude that the Proteus effect was successfully applied within an academic context to improve engineering students' recollection of their statistics scores. So now that we have an experimental design in which we can observe the Proteus effect, we can come back to our main research question about Deindividuation. For the second experiment, the population, the environment, and the task were the same as in the previous one. This time, however, all participants embodied the Einstein avatar. They were instead assigned to one of two Deindividuation conditions. So in the backstory condition, we attempted to increase the individuation by adding the description of Albert Einstein within the environment to reinforce the avatar's identity cues. On the other hand, the biography condition aimed to diminish the individuation by exposing participants to a short description of themselves, which included their name, age, class, and hobbies. Both descriptions were displayed on the virtual mirror and were visible during the entire task. So if the individuation plays a role in the Proteus effect, we expect that task scores will be higher in the backstory condition compared to the biography one. To deepen our analysis, we also chose to measure two additional explanatory variables using post-VR questionnaires. The first is a sense of embodiment that we measured using the virtual embodiment questionnaire, and the second one is avatar identification, which was measured using the subscale of the player identification scale. Even if their precise role within the Proteus effect remains unclear, both of these variables have been linked to it in the past. We chose to consider both as they may actually reflect complementary dynamics. Indeed, we could consider embodiment to reflect the bodily dynamics between the user and the avatar, whereas identification emphasizes the psychological ones. Since both notions have been hypothesized to be linked to a stronger Proteus effect, we hypothesize that both identification and embodiment levels will be higher in the backstory condition. So the results of this experiment did not reveal a significant difference in participants' statistics scores between the backstory and the biography condition, therefore not supporting our initial hypothesis. Similarly, when analyzing embodiment and identification level, we also didn't find a difference between the individuation condition like we had hypothesized. The lack of results regarding these two hypotheses may be explained in two ways. So firstly, it is possible that our manipulation of the individuation was not strong enough to truly shift participants' de-individuation. This can be improved by maybe making the identity cues more relevant to the participants. The second explanation is that simply the individuation doesn't play a role in the Proteus effect, and we can thus consider alternative hypotheses such as self-perception theory. Beyond these results, however, we conducted some additional exploratory analysis to better understand the dynamics at play. Interestingly, a multiple linear regression revealed that both embodiment and identification were significant predictors of task score. Embodiment was found to negatively predict statistics scores, whereas identification positively predicted them. This result may seem contradictory, but it might actually reflect some task-specific dynamics. Indeed, high identification to Albert Einstein, so emphasizing the psychological link between the user and the avatar, would be positive for the performance on a cognitive task, whereas high embodiment, so emphasizing the bodily aspects of Albert Einstein, may be deleterious, as the avatar may be perceived more as an elderly man than a figure of intelligence. Further testing is still required to see if other task-specific dynamics can be found using different experimental settings. So to recap, the preliminary experiment of this publication was able to successfully apply the Proteus effect in an academic context, therefore adding ecological validity to this phenomenon. The second experiment failed to demonstrate the role of the individuation within the Proteus effect. However, it highlighted the potential complementary and task-specific dynamics of identification and embodiment processes within the effect. To finish, I would like to quickly touch on the ethics of using avatars, especially in educational settings. I would like to emphasize that our results are not a recommendation to use Einstein or other avatars to try to fix potential academic struggles of some students. Firstly, because we actually don't know if these effects can be observed on a longer timescale, but more importantly, because some of the avatars could actually reinforce the same stereotypes that may have caused the academic struggles to begin with. For example, the figure of Einstein may reinforce prejudice about women's scientific abilities. We therefore recommend that the Proteus effect be implemented with caution regarding these issues. Thank you so much for listening.